So Max, welcome to another Osmium update. And I think we should just keep it that Osmium update sounds perfectly fine. So let's do that one. Um, First of all, nice to have you back on the video screens again because it's been a while and we should really do this more often. So let's commit to that for now. And let's start off with digital sovereignty because I think we've talked about it for multiple times now, and it's still a very hot topic. And let's cover it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me again on video. I think that the Christmas holidays are really over now and we're getting back on track again. So yeah, digital sovereignty and sovereignty in general, because we often talk about digital sovereignty, but there are so many aspects to that, right? And I think that you cannot just look at the data in the end, and you have to look also at the technology stack and what it means. So we are preparing a kind of a smaller asset that can help organizations understand a bit what you need to look at and where to go, some kind of considerations there. It's a very broad topic, and I could go on for half an hour. So is there a specific thing that you're interested in hearing particularly?
So, looking at the customer where I'm at the moment, I would say what is really interesting is especially kind of a framework or at least some perspective in what should be done with companies that have legislation and need to be sure that the data is covered within a sovereign kind of way. What should they be focused on? What are the things that they should really focus on first? And what are the steps after that? But not to go too deep into it, but at least have a perspective on it.
Yeah, it's kind of a multi-pronged exercise where, so you talked about data, so I'm going to focus primarily on the data, right? But you first need to understand what is your footprint, right? I mean, what kind of data you are storing. So there is always this aspect of data management and governance that we endlessly talk about, right? We're preaching in the desert perhaps, but that's what we think is important. So you need to understand what you have. You need to map what kind of criticality or sensitivity confidentiality this data has. Is it in scope of GDPR? Is it in scope of some, data sovereignty in the sense of legislation location, right? And data locality requirements, right? Which says it has to stay within certain geographic boundaries. And from there, then you can start exploring what kind of applications, what kind of software is using this data, right? How it is being processed. Is it being stored on a SaaS backplane? I'm thinking, for example, are you using Office 365? Are you using it in the proper region? Are you using Salesforce or anything else? How are you compliant in general? And from there, you can start looking at what you need to do to get back into compliance. But then you can go beyond and say, okay, we're running this on SaaS here. What happens if I lose my SaaS? So you have to kind of treat it as a kind of both a data governance and data management exercise on one hand, and on the other hand, you have to do a kind of a risk-based assessment. So again, I don't want to go too deep, but what business processes are impacted by this data? What does it mean if the data or the platform on which you're running becomes unavailable, et cetera, et cetera? So that's it in a very, very short way, because otherwise it's going to be a very deep dive. Does it help,
Yeah,
do you think?
yeah, I totally agree on it. And one of the things that I always say is that you really need to know your data, and make sure that you have a proper backup. And backup doesn't mean backup only. It needs at least some exercise in if something happens, can I recover? Um, Backup is one thing, recovering is the other thing. So I think that's an important one as well. Even if you have Office 365,
Yeah.
as you already mentioned, what happens when Office 365 for one reason comes unavailable. What then? What options do I have? How do I come back from it? So, yeah, there's much more to digest with that, but let's keep it short. Next topic for me would be that we're going to Amsterdam end of March. What are we going to do? And let's talk from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I look forward to see you in Amsterdam for KubeCon EU 2026. We're going to have, of course, some discussions over there with our good friends at the CNCF and the Linux Foundation. But of course, we're also going to be there to discuss not just with vendors, but we want also to discuss with customers and get kind of the temperature of what is hot in organizations. We do get a sense of that when we talk with, peers, with clients, etc. But we also want to make sure that we have the ability to be in that environment, which is very dynamic, to get a sense of what's happening. So just make sure that the provisions, the things we are seeing in the market, also align with the perception at the customer, right? So I think that's what we want to have primarily our conversation. So if you're going to be there, just hit us up. We're going to be regularly, putting up some messages over on LinkedIn to make sure that we can, secure some discussions with our friend or peers in the industry. So that's it for me. Yeah. And what about you?
We'll definitely put some links down below for the ones we've already done, right? It's not our first KubeCon, so we've done a couple before, and it's always good to have a kind of history view and see what went down on the other KubeCons, and totally agree with you that we're looking forward to being at this one as well, especially because it's in my backyard. It's in Amsterdam, so it's an easy one this year. But yeah, let's focus on things that matter, and there's a lot that matters at the moment. So probably we'll look into some sovereignty on the KubeCon side as well. Let's put it that way. Last one. Do you want to introduce that one?
Yeah, of course. Was that the one around sovereignty, or which one am I missing? Just tell me, because Alzheimer is strong with this one.
We can talk whatever you want. So the last one for me was the short edition on
Yeah, of course.
NVRAM and that kind of stuff.
Of course. But I was still kind of processing sovereignty, and I was processing, the things which I'm doing at home, experimenting with open source versions, of software that we know, experimenting with EU-based alternatives and so on. So this has been really interesting, and that's why I even look more and more forward to connect with the KubeCon community this year. But back at the topic you mentioned, whoever has been, looking for a bit of RAM or for some SSDs is probably very, very sad that they didn't purchase 6 months ago. So it is really crazy. I mean, we can thank our friends at Meta and wherever else for all of their fantastic stupid picture generators, which are polluting our timelines, be it on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or wherever else. But yeah, I mean, the challenge is real. We were discussing that back, I think 2-3 months ago with our friends at Solidigm when we were together in London, where they already mentioned that all of their manufacturing capacity was already purchased, if I'm not mistaken, for 2026. And that's where we are. There is a huge demand for storage. There is a huge demand for memory, which are key elements of processing. We talk a lot about GPUs, but you need to store the data somewhere. You need a place to store those models, all of those, inputs which are used to train the models. And you need a lot of RAM and high performance systems to do all of that, a lot of throughput, a lot of, very decent latency and so on. So that is where we are. And as you were saying, I mean, this is already starting to impact not just the server market, where, by the way, I have not anecdotal evidence, which I had started to see on LinkedIn, people saying that prices may go up, but I have actual evidence from, a client where I am closely working, and I've seen quotes which are rapidly evolving. The increase was 75% over 2025 over. So in January, we saw a 75% increase compared to November 2025 prices. By end of January,
I can top that by a lot.
yeah, yeah. So this was mid-January. End of January, the price was up 200%. So I mean, we had a twofold increase. Yeah, sorry, I'm not really good at math sometimes. And now, about 3-4 days ago, so just before the weekend, the increase was, I mean, threefold. I mean, so if you think that, so I had a project where I needed to get $100,000 of hardware per location. This has gone to $300,000 over the course of 6 weeks. So I don't know if you're seeing the same.
Absolutely the same, threefold. It's like a quote from end of, I think it was November or beginning of December, something like that, for virtual desktop servers, which need GPUs as well.
Yep.
So it went from, like you said, about somewhere in the hundreds to over 300K in just 2-3 months.
So
That's what's happening, but it's not the only thing that's impacted, right? What we're already seeing is that Nvidia and also AMD are already telling the market that they're not coming with the new video cards for the consumer. They're delaying them at least until next year. So the game industry is going to have an impact with that as well. We're seeing mobile phones. Actually, I saw a decrease for this year for 15% or something like that, for the mobile phones that can be delivered. So it's impacting a lot of things, and it's mainly because what you just mentioned, right? It's because Meta wants to generate stupid cats that can do things that they will never be able to do, but with AI you can let them do everything. So
yeah.
you know,
So I think I'll stick with my own physical cats, which sometimes might be a bit of an annoyance, but at least they're not making crazy things. They're just sleeping and they're happy. So one thing though, I mean, we're probably going to bleed over the illusory limit of 10 minutes that we all wasted for those calls. But let's go beyond anyways. What do you think could be some recommendations or remediations, some short-term, things that enterprises, organizations can do to kind of remediate that?
yeah, the fucking thing is that if you want to do that, you have to go into the cloud and do it that way.
Mhm,
So the thing that we said on sovereignty goes out the door.
mhm,
So they kind of make these things happen, I guess. But no, you can definitely look at, okay, are there local things that I could do, that it's not only the Azure's, the AWS's and the Google Clouds.
mhm.
There's other options as well. So you could definitely look at those. Actually, one of the things that is happening as well, what I saw is that AMD is going to bring back the DDR4 main boards and processors. So you could definitely look into that as well. And maybe we should start looking at, is it all necessary? Do I really need the 5090 super blah, blah, blah NVIDIA video card, or could I do with
Mhm.
little bit less as well? Because, in the end, what are you doing? You're playing a game.
Yep.
For companies, it's a different story, but you can definitely look at some older hardware that you can rent either or buy even, and say, instead of writing it off in 5 years, I will write it off in 3 years and do it that way. So there's multiple options that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about the same, right? So you talked about, depreciation of assets. You could consider, extending the lifetime of specific servers. You could consider, moving some workloads to slightly older, hardware to kind of, I mean, non-critical, of course, right? To kind of mitigate that. You could engage into right-sizing exercises because, of course, a lot of people and organizations tend to provide conservative estimates when it comes to software and so on. So there is that space. There was a point which I wanted to bring out as well when you were talking, and it kind of, as usual, I kind of miss it now. But the funny thing is, I was looking, so it came back. I was looking yesterday evening. I tend to look at some kind of, stuff like Craigslist. I was looking for some East German, old vintage watches because, and old, hi-fi receivers. And of course, the German thing is DDR, right? Dutch Democratic Republic or something like that. And then you put DDR and oh my God, the listings from memory. I mean, I would rather, yeah.
I have some if you want.
Yeah, I see that you're there with a vengeance, by the way. So yeah, exactly. So I mean, no watches, but plenty of memory. It looks like people are trying to do next billionaires selling memory. Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
The other thing which is interesting, our friend Pietro Putti, which we say hi to, also was telling me recently that he was out of memory for his lab, and I think that he purchased some Optane PCI Express, modules. So, we can say, was Optane, demise a badly timed, or Optane, go live a badly timed opportunity? Perhaps, right?
I think I still have such a Optane PCIe drives as well, so I'll look it up as well.
Put it up on a Craigslist or the Dutch equivalent, and maybe you can buy a new house on top of that.
Probably. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to look into that. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's multiple options. You can. The thing is, with extending your server hardware, a lot of times you will pay a lot of money for that as well if you want support on it. So you just have to look at, okay, what can we do? How can we make sure that we continue the operations that we have? What would be the best option? And if you have to pay 300,000 euros for making sure that your operations stay up and running, yeah, maybe that's the price you have to pay.
Exactly.
Is what it is.
Exactly. And I think that, to get back to your point on the cloud, I mean, understanding your footprint, your workloads, your data whatsoever is also a key prerequisite, because then you can say, okay, this is less critical for me. I can afford to take the risk to put that in the cloud. In general, it shouldn't necessarily always be a discussion like I need to take a risk because I'm putting something in the cloud, right? Because of course we've seen I don't want to be doing like fear, uncertainty, and doubt around cloud services. Some cloud services are perfectly fine, but I'm thinking more about the perspective of we have an opportunity there to kind of rethink what we are putting where, right? So if you know that your workload is not critical, if you have some dev test workloads, you can put them there, and you can also leverage some other alternative like managed services providers, for example. I think you were mentioning some of those to me earlier. So that's an option. And I think that is pretty much it, right? I could go on and on, but again, in the interest of time, I'll end it here from me.
I think we should do it. We should make this a podcast or something like that, because it's way easier. We can just talk and
who cares?
That's it. So maybe we should do that, and maybe people are happy with that as well. It's just having fun, talking about technical stuff, and there was a lot to digest, because there was a certain thing that you mentioned about data sovereignty and all that kind of stuff, where I was thinking, yeah, but you could do this as well. So let's go further into that, and we will definitely be back soon. And shout out to KubeCon and CNCF for having us. We're really looking forward to being there. Also, one of the other ones is A3 Communications, where we'll be in Paris in a couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one. Yeah, and that's what I look forward to as well. So we'll see you there 19th of March in Paris, and then the week after in KubeCon. Thank you, and see you soon.